Hey friends, it's Jen, and welcome to Good God Talks. Before we jump into today's episode, I'd love to know what you'd like me to cover in future series. So if you hit the link right there in your show notes, it says send us a text. We want to know what's been helpful, what topics you'd love us to cover, or what question you would love to have discussed on a future episode. We want to help you talk with God more. So let us know what would be helpful. At the time of this episode airing, we are approaching Christmas. And so I can't very well have a series right now on the names of God and not talk about the names of Jesus. For today, I want to take a look at Isaiah and the Israelite people in the time of Isaiah 9, verse 6, which is where we get the names of Jesus, that he's the wonderful counselor, everlasting Father, mighty God, and Prince of Peace. The prophet Isaiah proclaimed these truths about Jesus approximately 700 years before Jesus was born. That's pretty incredible to think about. And it's especially powerful in light of the context of what was going on for these original recipients. See, Isaiah delivered this message from God to God's people in a turbulent time. The wealthy oppressed the poor. Religious leaders were persecuting and exploiting the people. God's chosen people regularly turned their back on him and disobeyed and abandoned him as they went after false gods. It's a dark day. And the book of Isaiah includes messages from God that say that only a remnant of the people were going to remain. There were going to be floods and invasions and judgment and sorrow, and only a small percentage of the people were going to survive. But nevertheless, Isaiah told them of the coming Messiah. He told them that their rescuer was coming and what he was going to be like. And so I'm going to read some verses for us. But as I do, I encourage you to reflect and ask God this question. God, what do you want me to notice about the nevertheless-ness of Jesus? And yes, I might have made up a word there, but you'll see why in a minute. I want you to pay attention to what God is highlighting for you in the nevertheless-ness of Jesus. Listen for how God, through his spokesman Isaiah, described the role, the relationship, and the reputation of Christ. This is how God wanted to announce Christ's coming. And so I'll begin reading just a little bit of context of the setting and the time for us from the end of Isaiah chapter 8, and then I'll continue into Isaiah 9. It says, look to God's instructions and teachings. People who contradict his word are completely in the dark. They will go from one place to another, weary and hungry. And because they are hungry, they will rage and curse their king and their God. They will look up to heaven and down at the earth, but wherever they look, there will be trouble and anguish and dark despair. They will be thrown out into the darkness. Nevertheless, that time of darkness and despair will not go on forever. The land of Zebulun and Naphtali will be humbled, but there will be a time in the future when Galilee of the Gentiles, which lies along the road that runs between the Jordan and the sea, will be filled with glory. The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine. For a child is born to us. A son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and its peace will never end. He will rule with fairness and justice from the throne of his ancestor David for all eternity. The passionate commitment of the Lord of heaven's armies will make this happen. Let's imagine for a moment what this would be like. To be told that despite it all failures, all shortcomings, all despair, all darkness, God was still coming for your rescue. We don't have to imagine that hard because this was also true for us. This is also our experience as those that God has rescued. I love the phrasing of verse 6 here too, because it's considered perfect tense. A child is born, a son is given. It doesn't say that Jesus would be given in the future, but perfect tense is used to show that an action is already finished. Jesus was already given, even though he had not yet been born as a human. which lines up with so many verses in scripture that talk about how he was always the plan. Even in Revelation 13, verse 8, the Apostle John refers to Jesus as the Lamb who was slaughtered before the world was made. Isaiah got to tell them of what had already been done by their Messiah and also what would be coming when Messiah came to earth. What an incredible message that Isaiah got to hear and receive and then share with his people. And we're going to take the next few episodes to look at each one of these names and what impact that has for each one of us. But today we want to keep our focus on Isaiah and the ancient Israelites and the nevertheless-ness of the power of Christ and how Jesus was introduced to the world. And so I encourage you to take this question back to God to see what else he wants to share with you. God, what do you want me to notice about the nevertheless-ness of Jesus? Have a good talk.